Wonder Woman, one of the most iconic female superheroes, a cultural icon who stands shoulder to shoulder with Batman and Superman as one of the Trinity. While she isn't my personal favorite superhero, I have always been fairly fond of Diana, and if you ask most people what they think Wonder Woman represents or stands for, you'd probably get replies like these. She's a symbol of progress, of women's empowerment. While that's all true, Wonder Woman is also strong, brave, and compassionate. Plus, she's original, not a derivative of Superman or some cheap carbon copy of Batman. Diana possesses both beauty and brains, able to maintain a unique feminine quality that wouldn't prevent her from kicking 10 tons of fudge out of, say, Solomon Grundy. More impressively, she's faced off against Superman on multiple occasions. Wonder Woman is a perfect example of a powerful woman who's not afraid of being one. She simply is, in contrast to much of the contemporary female representation, saturating various forms of media. Many of these portrayals act overly aggressive. That just makes them look like they're overcompensating. Look, I'm not a 6'4" Goliath like Ben Affleck, which is why I don't dress up as Batman and spend my nights jumping over rooftops chasing criminals. It also runs the risk of getting me banged up in the local cuckoo's nest. When that's not the issue, they come off as dislikable characters, reminiscent of the pre-Iron Man Tony Stark. And what's up with its uniform haircut? As if they go to the same hair salon. So, anywho, after picking up the Injustice series, I couldn't help but notice how cracked, and not in a good way, the Injustice version of the character is, in comparison to her counterpart. During the first game, there's that great speech Wonder Woman gives to her evil twin, calling her out for aiding in Superman's rise to tyranny, stating that part of the Amazon's mission is to bring about peace and temper man's rages, not enable them. With that said, let's wind the clock all the way back to Superman's one bad day. Clark awakens to hear 2 heartbeats coming from Lois Lane's body. Yep, she is pregnant and all is well, until Lois goes missing. Spoiler, she's been abducted by the Joker. Right, after this, the entire Justice League is mobilized to search for Lois Lane. Superman ends up being the one to find both the Joker and Lois. He inhales Scarecrow's fear gas, and suddenly, a wild Doomsday appears. Supes tackles Doomsday and rockets him up into space. Shortly after, the gas starts to wear off, dispersing the image of Doomsday and revealing the body of Lois Lane. At this point in the tale, most people will say that Wonder Woman is not really involved. This is not accurate. Flying back to Earth, Superman arrives in the crater that was once the city of Metropolis, where Diana assures him none of this was his fault, pointing out that this was all caused by the Joker. Then she makes an incredibly stupid statement as Superman is about to fly off. She asks him where he's going. Hold on, Diana. The guy's whole world has just been ripped away from him, and you just fingered the madman that's responsible for what will most likely be the worst day of his entire life. Where do you think he's about to fly off to? McDonald's? Wonder Woman is not some clueless turnip. In other iterations, this would be the moment she would at least attempt to reason with him, or if it came down to it, physically stop him. And if that failed, assuming she's not being incapacitated, she would certainly alert the other members of the Justice League, letting them in on her suspicions of where Superman is heading. By the way, Hal Jordan does attempt to stop Superman. The reason it's particularly significant that Hal tries and Wonder Woman doesn't is because Hal Jordan, apart from having very high willpower, is just a regular human with a power ring, whereas Diana's powers are innate. Basically, Hal gets defeated easily through no fault of his own, while Diana never even tried to stop Superman, who flies off, smashes through the wall of the prison where the Joker is being interrogated by Batman, and proceeds to remove the Joker from the board game of life for good, after being deceived by him into not only closing the book on Lois Lane, but also the entirety of Metropolis, transforming Superman into what he should never be. Brightburn. Anyone remember that movie produced by James Gunn? No? Great. Diana informs Clark that she will arrange for him to speak to the press. Her choice of language at the end is very telling. Quote, "And you will say what I've been waiting to hear since I first met you," unquote. As if this whole time she has simply been waiting for an event like this to happen. Throughout this run, Diana is pushing Superman into what she thinks he should be. She knowingly does this. It's not an accident or an oversight. One of the most clear examples of her manipulation is immediately after Superman and Aquaman have a confrontation. Arthur tells Diana he can counsel Superman on how to be a peaceful leader, thanks to his own experience ruling as King of Atlantis. But does she tell Superman this? No. She only lets him in on the part where Arthur agreed to pull his armies back. What makes this so much worse is that Superman straight up says to Diana, surely Arthur must have said more. Diana's just like, nah bro, you tripping, and withholds a small but important piece of information. Now, I don't want to discount the injustice Superman's choices, but how well can he make informed decisions when he does not have all the pieces laid out in front of him, especially when information is being hidden by what is supposed to be one of his closest friends and allies? This series is crammed full of moments depicting just how corrupted this injustice Wonder Woman is. She is with Superman when he becomes a dictator, she is pushing him to become less tolerant. It's as if all she's wanted is to be in control this entire time. Superman was just standing in her way, but the second he was the most vulnerable he's ever been, instead of counseling him, she manipulated the situation in an effort to shape the world into what she thinks it should be. Really, Wonder Woman could have sat down with Clark and had a nice cup of tea. There, Superman, plenty of folks have lost people, and you don't see them turning into tyrants, do you? Let's return to Wonder Woman, who hooks up with Superman, which ordinarily I don't care that much about. But seeing this corrupted Wonder Woman with Superman is kind of icky. Be gone, fuck! Okay, there are a few more examples I'm going to talk about. This one right here is perhaps the most heartbreaking. It's from Barry's perspective of this young man who's idolized the Justice League ever since he was a kid. Basically, he's got these half-baked superpowers and a suit, which he attempts to use to stand up to Superman and Wonder Woman by putting on a fancy light show. They both grab him and slam him down so hard that they shatter both of the concrete and his body, leaving him in a wheelchair. The panel here depicts Superman looking down at this guy's broken body. And what I like to think is this moment of reflection, wondering if perhaps he went too far. Obviously, I can't say for sure if that's happening in the character's mind or not. I can say it's quite the contrast between his reaction and this rage monster next to him screaming at the top of her lungs, while in the background you see terrified civilians running for their lives. During another part of the story, we find Wonder Woman hovering over a camp in Mogadishu, I believe I said that correctly, before flying down and demanding all the soldiers drop their guns. Then she decides to take advice from the victims who have been treated horrendously by these soldiers, and pops the general's head like a piece of corn. Before I continue, I want to make it clear these soldiers have treated these women in a most despicable manner, as less than human. Wonder Woman begins to fly off. Yes, it's clearly a good idea to leave the people who have just been victimized alone, equipped with weapons, against the now disarmed soldiers. You can probably guess what happened next. I believe the Injustice Wonder Woman knew the outcome before she flew away. Has anyone watched Netflix's Daredevil? Specifically the courtroom scene, where that young guy in the back yells at Frank, "You killed my dad! I don't give a shit what you've been through! Order. You killed him! Order in the court!" That brief outburst is enough to disturb Frank Castle, which brings up questions like, what if these soldiers happen to have families? Not to mention the psychological trauma that could arise from the survivors' actions dispatching the soldiers. Sure, revenge may feel fantastic at first, but what about later? Will they be plagued by nightmares for the rest of their days? Or could they end up just as bad as the soldiers who victimized them? These are all possible outcomes the Injustice Wonder Woman doesn't care about at all. When I was making my way through this series, I got the impression she only really cares about immediate results, which is an awful way to make decisions. Injustice 2 can be a scary game. Do you like fear? This doctor sure does. The effect Scarecrow's toxin has on Wonder Woman is intriguing. We get to see her biggest fear revealed, which is, should Superman ever regain his marbles, so to speak, he would blame her for pushing him further along the path of darkness. We even catch a brief confirmation of Diana's desire to rule the world. If Crane can be believed, we should take into account some factors first. The man's a walking encyclopedia on everything fear. Secondly, before he became a criminal, he was a professor of psychology. On the other hand, he is a bit cuckoo Cocoa Puffs and has been known to lie to further his schemes. But I wouldn't say he's an outright liar either. It's perhaps best to take anything Dr. Crane says with a grain of salt. Another curious encounter that occurs during the second game is when Batman turns the lasso of truth on Wonder Woman. We hear Diana say that Batman can't turn his back on him, referring to Superman. Is she trying to say that the person Clark needs the most is not her, but Batman, because he really does have Clark's best interests in mind, unlike herself? Also, note that Wonder Woman does not say that Batman should join them during this short encounter, only that Clark needs Batman. Whatever your thoughts on the Injustice Wonder Woman, she sure as heck didn't help Superman. The only thing she did help him with was his descent into villainy. It would have been interesting to see if Superman's fall was always a sure thing, without Wonder Woman's involvement. Could he have been pulled back from the edge before it was too late? I mean, if you are going to head down the dark Superman route, which personally I find to be an idiotic choice that displays the writer's lack of imagination and understanding of Superman's character, then at least add in a redemptive arc where the character comes to the realization of exactly what their actions have led to, spurring them on a redemptive journey to see if they can earn back the title of hero. Such a journey should take time and not be wrapped up in a few scenes conveniently placed towards the end portion of the movie.
Okay, now I'm good.
Game, comic, whichever medium the story is told through.